We won't keep you long. Have supper going, and the microwave will go off soon. The timer will in the microwave. So if I'm not done by then, I'll be done then. All right? So just want to talk a little bit more on this spiritual warfare, armor of God kind of train of thought that we looked at last week. And tell you about a guy that was a general in the Marines, starting back in, I guess, the 30s, maybe even before that, but on into to World War II as well. And he was Chesty Puller was his name. Kind of an odd name. I guess Chesty was his nickname. Lewis, I believe, was his first name. So Chesty Puller, a general, eventually in the Marines. Considered the Marines Marine, as he was called. And he had like 5 Navy Crosses awarded to him. And there are even several of these kind of weird phrases that the Marines chant together that involve his name, because he has this legacy of being such the consummate Marine. Something like, if it's good enough for Chesty Puller, it's good enough for me. That kind of thing. But what's fascinating about him and his career, he really got his start, and his specialty was strategy in terms of really close combat, fighting in the jungles, not so much large groups of infantry, but rather smaller groups. And he had some pretty funny and bold statements that kind of represented his leadership style, all that. And they also reveal his attitude, though, toward fighting and toward battle. He's said to have said when he was shown a flamethrower for the first time, where does the bayonet go on it? So that's pretty funny. Where does a bayonet go on a flamethrower? And he also said this is really funny. He said, okay, gentlemen, they're to our left. They're all to our left. They're all to our right. They're all in front of us, and they're all behind us. And that means they can't get away from us this time. He had an attitude of such that was confidence, it was boldness, and he knew that attitude was important for his soldiers, for the men he was leading. There's one story in particular about one of his battles, one of his skirmishes in the Marines, where he was on Guadalcanal with his troops, I believe the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, and they were protecting an air base on that island. 1942, Japan's trying to take that island, and so he's got his men stretched out over the course of a mile around protecting the perimeter of that air base. And a lot of the Japanese troops attack them during the night to try to overwhelm them and catch them off guard. And so for 3 solid hours in the dark, Chesty goes up and down this line of men that are spread out. He goes up and down, back and forth, up and down, back and forth, this line of his fellow men, of his soldiers, the ones he's responsible for, giving them strategy, giving them direction, giving them leadership, but also giving them encouragement as they continue to fight this onslaught of Japanese soldiers. And so when the sun came up and dawn came, the scene revealed that some 1,400 Japanese had lost their lives. They had turned back this attack. They had managed to form this resistance. And the U.S. had only suffered 70 casualties because he was up and down, telling them what to do, encouraging them. He knew the importance not only of skill and ability in the life of a soldier, but also his motivation, also his attitude, also his confidence. And what's fascinating is Paul, in writing to young Timothy, a preacher that he's left behind in Ephesus in 1 Timothy, he tells him, listen, Timothy, I'm going to leave you here because people are trying to come in with false doctrine. And so you need to be here to be the source of truth, the source of remaining strong and firm in what God has revealed. And early on in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verses 18 and 19, he says, I'm giving you these things so that you will fight or wage good warfare, holding faith and a good conscience. So notice those two things just quickly. Holding faith and a good conscience. See, Paul recognized for Timothy, he was going to have some tough battles. He was going to have an opposition. He was going to be attacked. He was going to feel like he was the only one standing up for truth. He says, you have to wage good warfare. And in so doing, you have to have a strong faith and a clear mind, or a clear conscience. So it's interesting to see that verse, 1 Timothy 1, verse 19, in light of Ephesians 6 and verse 16, when Paul says, taking, in every circumstance, taking on the shield of faith, which is able to extinguish the fiery arrows of Satan. Then he says, taking the helmet of salvation. Paul recognizes there's this important, necessary element of faith that comes to protecting our souls, but also the importance of a clear mind, a clear conscience. And so as we fight these spiritual battles, as we fight against Satan, we have to have our faith and our clear thinking both in line with what God would have us to do. Have them thinking spiritually and being bold and confident before the Lord. We'll talk more about those two concepts this week. And thank you for tuning in, whether it's live, whether it's a replay. Remember, if you're watching on replay, you can tap the screen for some hearts. You can reshare this. That would be great. But just thanks for watching. Even if you don't do those things, that's quite all right as well. Hope you have a great day and a great rest of the week. If I'm going to be of any assistance, let me know. Thanks so much, Periscope.